Hey guys, this is Paul from Twin Flicks, a film channel for film lovers like yourself. Today is a special video. We are interviewing actor in film, TV, and voice actor Eddie Deezen is with us today. We're going to ask him a few questions and get to know his process and how he got started. So again, I want to thank you, Eddie, for joining us today.
My pleasure. It's great to be here, Paul. Thanks for having me.
So I guess the first question I want to get down to is acting something you always had an itch for? I mean, did you plan on being an actor, and how did you get started?
Very early days. I always loved the guys. I always loved the Three Stooges. I remember from my earliest days, literally 3 years old, I loved the Three Stooges. Jerry Lewis, I loved Charlie Chaplin, all those guys. And I just started really seeing these movies. I started seeing Abbott and Costello and Martin and Lewis. And then I decided, and by the way, I couldn't do anything else. There was nothing else. I was totally drifting through life, totally aimless, nothing. So I decided to be a comedian. It kind of was foisted on me. It was either that or stay where I was, and I wanted to get out of there.
Wait, so I guess you said you want to be a comedian. So did you want to be more of a stand-up or an actor as a comedian?
Yeah, more actor. More I wanted to get into films. I have a hard time memorizing lines, so stand-up was hard. Even when I did my brief stand-up, I worked at the Comedy Store for a little bit in L.A., then I worked in the Comedy Store at Westwood. But even then, Paul, I had cue cards. I had little index cards, and I'd read my jokes off the index cards. I couldn't remember it. So films are kind of easy because films you do one scene at a time, and you can just kind of nail one scene, and sometimes you don't have a lot of lines. So I kind of wanted to get into films, and they were better than I thought. But even with films, sometimes I had cue cards. Some, have the ability. Like, they say Jackie Gleason could just look at a script, he'd look it over, and he'd just know the whole script. He'd know everybody's parts. But some just can't do it, and it's an ability I don't have.
So what was your first acting job? I mean, did you start on commercials or stage or film?
I started, I think I did. I came out to L.A. I think Grease was actually well, the first thing I did was The Gong Show.
From Hollywood, almost live, it's The Gong Show.
And I did my stand-up routine on there, and you could see me with my cue cards. And Paul Williams, the singer, gonged me. And that was my first gig. And I met Chuck Barris. He was a great guy. And I got my first validation. J.P. Morgan was a singer. She was a lady on the show. And as I was walking off stage, I got gonged, and I was walking off real dejected. And she said, "Eddie, we love you." She yelled out, and I walked off stage. And then I got a waffle iron for appearing on The Gong Show.
That must make you feel a little better about being gonged.
Yeah,
I love
definitely. You want that admiration, And then also when I was at the end of the show, they were playing this song. We were all there together. And Chuck Barris came over to me, and he goes, "Eddie, you got a good little actor. You got a real good actor." And he was very nice, Mr. Barris. So he kind of encouraged me a little bit, too. So that made me feel better, too.
Nice. So it sounded like that they saw talent there, even in just your little part on the show.
Yeah. Very nice of them, to do that.
That's cool. So what was your first feature, and what was that like being on set for the first time?
It was Grease.
What's your name? I want you. It's Eugene. You're a great picture. Oh, thank you.
Usually when a person does their first film, Paul, it's usually a dog. It's usually a forgettable film. I know Tom Hanks did a real mediocre film, and, usually started in Bowers, but I started in Grease was my first. So I kind of started in a classic film, which is rare. When people ask me, they go, "What was it like doing Grease?" I go, "Imagine the greatest party of your life, the greatest party you've ever been to, and imagine it lasting 2 months." That's what Grease was like. It was that cool. Everybody was nice. All the cast and crew were wonderful. John Travolta was so kind to me. He would call me buddy. He'd come over and shake my hand every day, always walk over and shake my hand. Olivia was nice. Everybody in the cast and crew was wonderful.
Wow. So when you were filming that, I know sometimes when you film a movie, sometimes actors have said they have a sense that they know this is going to be a hit or not.
Right.
Did you ever get that sense?
I think what it is when people do the first film, they almost always think it's going to be a hit because you don't have any reality on it. You just think this is going to, I'm going to do a film. It's going to be like Star Wars or Gone with the Wind. It's going to be this great film. Almost everybody thinks that. So Grease, I go in, and I thought it'd be a hit, but little did I know Grease is actually like that. Grease is like Star Wars and Gone with the Wind. It's a classic. So I did think it would be a hit. I knew John was so hot. John Travolta was red hot at the time, so I thought that would help put us over. I thought it looked like fun, and I thought the songs were great. So, yeah, I did think it would be hit. Now, to this extent, I didn't know I knew Grease would be to this extent, where it's like this legendary film. Because you don't even, you're 20 years old and you're such a goofy kid. I was so ignorant and goofy, I didn't even know, But I thought it was going to be a hit, to answer your question simply. I thought it would be a hit, maybe not to this extent, though. I'll tell you a great story how Grease saved my life one day. I'm in Hollywood, okay? I'm at a bus stop in Hollywood, okay? I'm reading this little book or whatever. And it was one of those times I just wanted to be left alone, I just wanted to read in peace. In Hollywood, there's a lot of lonely people. Sometimes you'll be at a bus stop and people will talk to you just because they're lonely, But I didn't want to be bothered this day. And I was kind of rude. I see this guy I'm reading my book. This guy out of the corner of my eye sits down. I go, oh, geez, I don't want to be. He goes, what time is it? Now, I was kind of rude. I go, it's 6:30. I said it kind of curtly, kind of with, I could go, oh, it's 6:30, sir. I could have been nice, but I go, it's 6:30. I was kind of abrupt. Then I hear on the side, I heard this guy sitting to my left. He goes, don't you disrespect me, man. So I look over my shoulder. This was a gangbanger. I had been rude to a gang. This guy is a gangbanger, literally in this black leather. He's a killer. It might have been the Crips and the Bloods or whatever, but this guy was literally a gangbanger. I was scared out of my wits. I'm like frozen in fear. I see the guy walk off. He goes over. He's talking to three of his friends. They huddle together. I'm thinking, Jesus, these guys are going to kill me. They're literally. I had like $100 on me. I go, maybe they'll just rob me. Maybe they'll beat me up. Maybe they'll just beat the crap out of me. Whatever. But I go, the worst thing that's going to happen is the least thing is they're going to at least rob me. I go, please don't let me die. I go, I was literally praying, please don't let him kill me. So I was scared to death. So the guy walks back to me slowly. The other three guys stay there. He walks. He goes, hey man, are you the guy from Grease? I go, yeah, that's me. I'm Eugene. Hi, how are you? I shook his hand. I ran over to the other three guys. I shook all their hands. One of the gangbangers there, he goes, hey, man, is Olivia Newton-John, is she that hot in real life? I go, yeah, she's real hot. She's beautiful in real life. I kibitz and chatted with these guys for like 5 minutes. Luckily, mercifully, I see a bus coming, like the cavalry, like John Wayne on the cavalry horse coming. But a bus comes down. Luckily, I shook their hands. I say, goodbye. It was so nice to meet you, da-da-da-da. I literally get on the bus and I went up. I swear to God, if I hadn't been in Greece, I think they would have killed me. Wow. I think these guys would have just beat me to death. Because, literally, not only could one of these guys beat me up, one of these guys' girlfriends could have beat me up. They could have beat the crap out of me, but luckily it ended on a nice note. Greece literally saved my life.
Wow. That's a good story.
Yeah.
So, again, like you said, you were talking about Greece, and everyone knows you mainly everyone knows you as Eugene from Greece.
Exactly. It's like the smallest role I ever had, Paul, but that's the one everybody knows me for because it's Grease. Everybody wants to talk about Grease. You meet people, what was Grease? Occasionally they'll say something else, but I'd say 80% of the people I meet that know me, they'll want to talk Grease. They'll go, you're the guy in Grease, or what was Grease like? What was John Travolta like? Was that fun? Like stuff like that.
Yeah, Grease is one of it's a movie that everybody grew up with. Like you said, it's like Star Wars. Everybody kind of grew up with that movie.
Right.
But you also did another film I want to talk about, and that is with Robert Zemeckis' I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Where are we going? Come on! Oh! Take me with you! I can't go in there. This elevator isn't lined up properly.
Best director I ever worked with. Zemeckis is the best. I worked with Spielberg, but Zemeckis is the best director I ever worked with. He's wonderful. That was his first film, I Want to Hold Your Hand. And I knew right there, I knew this guy's something special. He had this touch, great communication. A great director communicates with actors. He was a great communicator. I felt comfortable with him. He wrote me a funny role. He knew what was funny. He just was, I can't tell you how much I admire Bob Zemeckis. I love him. And he remembered me 25 years later, and he wrote me into Polar Express. That's how I got Polar Expresses, just because I did I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Do you know what kind of train this is? Huh? Train. Do you know what kind of train this is? Well, do ya? Montezuma, the king of the Aztecs, would drink 50
I went in to read for Bob for Polar Express, okay? I was supposed to do some voiceover fill-ins. I think some dub-ins or something, or some kind of a little bit. I was going to do something. And I went in, and Bob was in a booth inside there. And he would put his thumb up. If I did my line right, he was like a Roman emperor. He'd put his thumb up. If it wasn't the way he liked it, he'd put his thumb down, and we'd do a retake. So he just thumb up, thumb down. And, then I met him afterwards. I love Bob. I said, you remember such and such, and he remembered some stuff. And he remembered me, and then I did screen test for Polar Express. I went in, they did a film test of me, and luckily I got the role. I knew nothing about it, but I did get it, yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about that a little bit later.
Sure.
I still want to go on a little bit about, talk a little bit about I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Absolutely. I was playing myself. I played a Beatles nut, which is me.
Anyway, like Ringo Starr, you know, he changed his name from Richard to Ringo. Well, that's what I did. My real name's Richard, and I changed it over to Ringo, see? You know how the real Ringo has lots of rings? Well, I got my own ring, too, see? Just like Ringo.
Good, I know all that stuff.
So Ringo Klaus, the character, that's the closest I ever played to myself in a movie. I'm basically that guy about the Beatles. Yeah, it was a delight. It was a joyful part, so much fun. I don't remember any trouble on that film. I loved all the cast. I loved Bob. Bob Gale was a co-writer who later did Back to the Future with Bob, and I loved him. We're still friends to this day. And it was just a joy, that film. I just loved it.
Did it come out the same year as Grease?
Yes, same year. Now, I did Grease. This is the sequence of it. Grease was my first film. I did that. Then I did a little turkey called Laser Blast. Now, Laser Blast was the first to come out. Laser Blast came out March 1st, 78. Grease came out June of 78, and I Want to Hold Your Hand came out second, April of 78. So that's the sequence that came in. It was kind of a mixed-up sequence. But those were my first three films in that way.
Man, that's amazing. You know, for someone that just started out and doing 3 films at once, that's...
3 films at once, 3 right in order, and it was a great year. 77 was a great year.
And,
yeah.
You know, at the time, I'm sure nobody knew who Robert Zemeckis was, but now, you know, he's huge. So at the time, you're not really thinking, oh, wow, I'm working with Robert Zemeckis.
Exactly, and he wrote the next one, 1941. He wrote that with Bob Gale, which Spielberg directed. I got to work with Spielberg, but we can get into that, too.
Yeah,
but that was the next one, follow-up.
Did you audition for all 3 films, or did you do one and then say, like Robert Zemeckis heard, hey, you were in Grease, I want to know who this guy is?
Grease, I went in, literally, I went in like Pee Wee Herman. This was pre-Pee Wee Herman. Pee Wee's later a friend of mine, and we can get into that later. I worked with Pee Wee in Midnight Madness, but there was no Pee Wee Herman at this time. So I put on this white ice cream suit, white bucks, like Pee Wee later wore. And I greased my hair with Brill Cream, which I'm a nerd. There's no reason to do that because that's what the cool guys did. But I greased my hair with Brill Cream. I went into Paramount Studios. It was all these Fonzie-type guys, all these Fonzie guys in leather jackets. That was a big thing at that time. They were there, and I was the only geeky nerd. So I went in, I read. I think in Grease I have like 4 lines, 3 or 4 lines. But I went in, I read with the director, Randall Kleiser, who just had his birthday. He's a wonderful guy. Joel Thurm, the casting director, and Alan Carr, our producer. It was the 3 of them and me in a room. Anyway, while I'm reading, I noticed they nudged each other. I was kind of reading the script, and I looked up, and they were nudging each other. So I knew I was doing good. I saw that nudge, and then I did get it. Now, this is a story, Paul. This is a true story. I don't know if you're religious, but it's a true story. But I got the role of Eugene. I was cast. I called all my family and friends and told them I'm in Grease. A few days later, Paramount called me. They called my agent. They said, we're cutting the role of Eugene out of the movie. It's not going to be in anymore. There's no more Eugene. So, of course, I wanted to die. You know, I told everybody I'm going to be in the film. I thought I got a big break, and they're not going to have it in the film. So I called my agent. My agent said, let's go to church. So I'm Jewish. I don't know if I'm going to church. I've never been in a church, but she goes, let's go to church. We go to church. She goes, let's light candles. What? I'm Jewish again. She goes, light a candle and say a prayer. So we literally lit candles and said a prayer. I prayed, of course, I'd be put back in Grease. I swear to God this is true. The next day, we get a call from Paramount. They said, the role of Eugene's back in Grease. We're putting you back in. You're in the movie. Wow. You can believe it or not, but it's a true story. Who knows where I'd be if I didn't get Grease. Grease got me started.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that is insane.
Yeah.
After you filmed Grease, then did you go in to audition for I Want to Hold Your Hand?
Paul, it was the most auditions I ever did. I did 9 auditions for I Want to Hold Your Hand. Now, they knew about me earlier, but they wanted to read me with different girls, and I read 9 auditions. I heard after one of my auditions, I went in for my first audition, and then the girl told me later, Sally Dennison, the casting director, she said Bob Gale was crying. She said he was literally crying. He was laughing so hard. I hit it off with Zemeckis and Gale that first day, and I auditioned 8 more times, and I finally got it. And I love doing that movie.
So during the 9 or 8 more times of auditioning, were you starting to get kind of worried that maybe why are they continually calling
worried,
you back?
Annoyed. In those days, you didn't get paid. Now, and now I think nowadays in Screen Actors Guild, you get paid. If you have like more than a certain number of auditions, which is 9 is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But a certain number, I think like 3 or 4, maybe 5 or whatever, you start to get paid. They give you a stipend, at least. So you get something out of it. But I went in and read 9 times. I got nothing out of it. It was weird. It's like, haven't they decided yet? But for some reason, they didn't tell me I was cast yet. They could have said, Eddie, you're cast, but we want to have you read with different girls. And that's what they did, but they didn't tell me that. That still might be the best film I ever did, as far as me, I mean. Just that I did good in that film. Zemeckis just knows how to direct me. He knows my character. He knows how I work, and he's good.
My brother and I We've worked in the business somewhat, and I've known some people. I do know some people that worked with Zemeckis, and they say that when he writes a script, he's very, very specific of who he wants for that part.
Right.
And if you go in an audition and you're not right, he won't ask you back.
Now, what you say is interesting, Paul, because when we had the wrap party for Polar Express, the guy came in, he said, "Hi, my name's Alan Silvestri." Now, remember I said I auditioned, I screen tested for Polar Express, and they did. They did a screen test. But Alan Silvestri wrote the music for Polar Express. He writes all the music for Bob Zemeckis' films. And he came up to me at the wrap party. He goes, "Let me tell you something." He goes, "Bob Zemeckis wrote the role for you. He knew he wanted you from the word go." Wow. He knew right away. So it's weird, but for some reason they still screen tested me too. The stories kind of conflict, so it's kind of weird. But I don't know. Maybe Bob did want me there. For some reason the studio maybe wanted to screen test me. I don't know why they did it.
Again, good recognition. I mean, you leave an impression with every movie you do, it seems like.
Oh, thank you. That's very nice of you.
I mean, it's just with fans and even directors, producers, right? I mean, the fact that even a composer, that he came to you and said, "Hey, Robert Zemeckis wrote this for you," I mean, that says a lot about your work ethic.
Oh, thank you. Thanks.
And then after that, did you do 1941?
1941 came up, yes.
Don't worry, pal. You're perfectly safe, like a babe in his mother's arms. Why, you got nothing to worry about. I went swimming around in one of these things 180 degrees and I didn't get hurt. No, sir, buddy boy. There's no way you can get killed in one of these things unless you really try. Like this one guy I knew, he committed suicide. He just stood right up and did a swan dive straight down. Sit down, please.
Bob Zemeckis wrote that, and he was like, Spielberg and him were very close. But Steven directed this. Bob wrote it with a guy called Bob Gale, who I love. He's a great pal of mine. And they wrote it, and that was fun to them. And I got to work with Belushi, John Candy, Dan Aykroyd. They were wonderful. The greatest lunch of my life, Paul, the greatest lunch of my entire life. I'm working on the set one day. Okay, I'm a 22-year-old goofy kid. Literally, I'm a 22-year-old green kid. And Steven Spielberg turns to me one day. He goes, "Eddie, you want to have lunch with us?" I'm like, you think? No blank, Sherlock, Yeah. So I go there. We go to the commissary of the studio. It was MGM Studios. Steven Spielberg, John Belushi, Dan Aykroyd, and I are having lunch. I'm sitting there. I didn't say a word all lunch, Paul. I sat there, I'm trying to keep my jaw from dropping, I'm sitting, it was so surreal. But I just sit, and Steven and John and Dan were all talking, and I just sat there. So we finished lunch. I realized, oh, my God, I don't have any money. I didn't bring any money. This is so embarrassing. Luckily, Steven treated us. Steven picked up the tab, and he treated us, yeah.
Wow.
It was a surreal lunch, very cool day.
So the stories you hear about how generous Spielberg is true?
Oh, my God, yes. So nice, so totally generous, yes. Very kind man, really nice guy.
Now, you played Herbie,
Herbie, right on the right.
Honestly, to me,
on the Ferris wheel.
Yeah. Honestly, to me, is one of the most memorable characters of the film. I mean, I remember watching it when I was a kid, and last week before this interview, I rewatched it, and I just have so much fun with watching that character.
Thank you so much.
Now, you worked with the dummy.
Right, and Murray. Don't forget Murray Hamilton, my partner.
Murray. Now, did you have...
And the dummy, right.
Did you have any training to work with the dummy? No,
I did. Here's what it was. It was totally fake. I would hold him, but usually we spend most of the film up on the Ferris wheel. Mm-hmm. There was a guy called Jerry Lane was there, and he was a real ventriloquist. They tested my voice, and they didn't want it. For some reason, they wanted Jerry's more, and Jerry's voice fit it better. So that's Jerry Lane's voice you hear as a dummy.
You guys are Jap sub.
And Jerry does all the manipulating of the dummy. When I'm talking to him and he's talking, that's Jerry doing it. He's just not seen on camera.
And now going back to the Ferris wheel, what was it like being on top of that Ferris wheel? I mean, were you on the Ferris wheel for hours or?
Yeah, literally we spent time. Now, we would be brought down, Paul. Murray was a chronic smoker. We would go down and Stephen had an oxygen tank. And Murray would be short of breath, and Stephen bring him down. They'd bring the Ferris wheel down. We'd go over, and Murray would, he'd take a few hits of oxygen. He literally needed the oxygen. He'd been a smoker for years, and he'd take the oxygen. So we did that. I'll tell you the greatest story. We're on the Ferris wheel, okay? So Stephen's whipping us around one day real fast, me and Murray and the dummy. He was whipping us around real fast. I got motion sick. I got real sick. Please let me down. I felt real sick. I felt like throwing up. I felt nauseous. So Stephen goes, go lay in my bed in my dressing room. So I go there, Steven's secretary, a real pretty girl, walked me in, laid me down on Steven Spielberg's bed. I'm laying on Spielberg's bed. So I feel nauseous, I don't know if you've ever been motion sick. It's the worst feeling in the world. But I crawled on the floor, literally. I went into the bathroom. I threw up in the toilet. I'm thinking, oh, my God, I just threw up in Steven Spielberg's toilet. So I go, this is one of the highlights of my life, my career. I threw up in Steven Spielberg's toilet. It was an honor.
That is just insane. Man, that must have been just so surreal.
Yep.
Now, I read somewhere that you're afraid of heights. Is that correct?
Yes, I'm not good with heights. Now, I wasn't that bad in those days. I was 22. You know how when you're a kid, some stuff doesn't bother you? Then later, how old are you, Paul?
I'm 41.
Okay, so you know how later on sometimes stuff bothers you? It didn't bother you as a kid?
Yeah.
Have you ever had that happen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is one of those. When I was on the Ferris wheel with Murray, I never remember being scared. I got motion sick, but I never remember the heights. It was a big Ferris wheel. We were way up there. And, they had the cameras up there, and they'd photograph us from a ladder, but I didn't mind it. Now I do get scared of heights. For some reason, it came in years later, whatever happened, something in my mind clicked, and I am scared of heights. It's actually, I was telling my sister that it's my biggest fear.
So how did you get that gig? I mean, did Zemeckis recommend you for the part? Do you know?
He must have. Well, when we did I Want to Hold Your Hand, Steven was on the set a lot.
Oh, okay.
I did know Steven from there, and he would hang out with us, and I remember making him laugh, and he would... I remember talking to him on the set. They had a deal with Universal when Bob did I Want to Hold Your Hand. They go, if you can't finish this film, because it was his first film, they go, if you can't finish it, Spielberg's going to do it for you, take over.
Oh, wow.
And that was in the contract. But luckily, Bob did finish the movie.
Yeah. So, okay. So obviously Spielberg knew of you being on the set of I Want to Hold Your Hand.
Yes,
and
because I didn't audition for 41. I'm 90% sure I didn't audition. They just hired me.
Okay. So
yeah.
So Zemeckis must have. Oh yeah. Okay. So they must have had you in mind for the part all along, and they brought you in.
Yeah.
I mean, did they call you up and say, "Hey, you want to come film this movie with me?" How did that work?
The agents will call you. My agents call and say, da-da-da, they want to hire you. They want you for 1941. And, it was cool in those days. That was back in the day, I was working like crazy. Now I was set to do Meatballs, They wrote me into Meatballs. I was supposed to be Spaz in Meatballs. That role was written for me.
Oh.
But I was doing 1941. I couldn't do it. So I was so busy in those days, I turned down a Bill Murray film to do that. Nowadays, I'd kill to work like that, But you know how Hollywood is. Things change, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So now, did you work much with John Belushi, or did you hang out with him on set much?
I met Belushi at the premiere of I Want to Hold Your Hand. It was in New York, and I met John there. He was at the party afterwards, and he was alone on the couch, and I went over and I sat by him, and we talked for like 15 or 20 minutes. He was a serious guy when I met him. A nice guy, a great guy, but very serious. He wasn't a joke cracker, like Robin Williams. He just was serious. We talked about religion and stuff like that, I remember. And he just couldn't have been nicer, and I got to be friends there. I didn't see him a lot when we actually shot the film, but I got to know him from around. I had that lunch with him and all. I don't remember seeing him on the set a lot when we shot the film, actually. But we were pals, He was a total pro on the set. I get asked, did you see any drugs? Did you notice he's on drugs? I saw him as a total professional. I remember one day on the set, everybody was around, the whole cast and crew, there was hundreds of people, and Steven said, John, we're going to need you on the set, it was early, 4:30 in the morning. And John said, I'll be there. It was very heroic. Everybody applauded, I remember. It was like he was Superman or something, and we all applauded. It was a nice little moment. And he was he couldn't have been nicer. He was a nice guy. And then the last time I saw John, we meet each other around town. We'd say hi, because you bump into each other. You bump into people and you just say hi in Hollywood. But anyway, I came out of a bad audition. I just came out of a bad audition, and John Belushi was there. And he said, Eddie, how are you? I said, John, I just had this terrible audition. I go, they didn't like me, and I didn't get it. He goes, they're assholes. And and then he walked away. But that was the last time I saw John. He was just a very open guy like that. He was out there, he would just say whatever he felt. But I never saw the drug stuff. I never saw that side of him. I saw him as a very kind man, a very nice guy. Total pro, great guy.
Going back to when you said that you still keep in contact with Bob Gale, do you still keep in contact with Spielberg and Zemeckis? Or
no, haven't. The last time I saw Steven was I've only been to the Academy Awards once. I was literally a seat filler in 1980, and Steven was there. Anyway, I saw Steven there. He was going out with Valerie Bertinelli at the time, and this is how long ago it was. He goes, Valerie, this is Eddie Deezen, goes, he's in all my movies, he said. Luckily, I was in those two, and I was never in another film of his again. But he was such a kind man to say that, But he introduced me to Valerie Bertinelli.
And Zemeckis?
The last time was the pickups on Polar Express. I hugged him. It was the last day. We were shooting there. Tom Hanks, the nicest guy in the world. Literally, we're in the last day of shooting. Goes, Eddie. Goes, I hear you're a baseball fan. Yeah, I am. Goes, I've got box seats at Dodger Stadium. Do you want to go to a game with me? Wow. I'm thinking, are you serious? It's like you're kidding me, right? Yeah. I almost jumped out of my skin. Yes, So anyway, later he took me to 3 Dodger games. Tom Hanks. He was the nicest guy in the world. I have so many stories about him. I'll tell you one story just off the top of my head. We go on the set, one day. This was the day Captain Kangaroo died. Literally, Captain Kangaroo died. I was real bummed out. I'm in makeup. So Tom Hanks comes in, Tom, he's a force of nature, So we talked about, Tom and I reminisced how we loved Captain Kangaroo, how we grew up watching Captain Kangaroo. It was the first show I ever loved. Tom Hanks comes bouncing out of the makeup room. He sings me the Tom Terrific song. There was a character on Captain Kangaroo called Tom Terrific. It was a little cartoon.
I'm Tom Terrific, great adventure lover, with mighty Manfred at my side, villains run for cover.
He sings this little kiddie song, I'm Tom Terrific, I go to planets with my dog, and anyway, Tom Hanks sings me this song. I'm looking up into the sun, and I'm watching Tom Hanks sing me this Captain Kangaroo song to me. I was like, it was so surreal. Then he finishes. I didn't know what to say. I was speechless. So I go, you know what? You're a great guy. And he just smiled and walked off. That's how Tom Hanks was every day. He always would do something incredible like that, and he sang me that song. I'm the only one that ever heard it, and he walked off. He just loved life. He loved everybody. He treated everybody nice. I brought my girlfriend to the set. I remember Tom, how nice he was to her. He talked to her and on. He was so great. And then when he took me to the Dodger game, Paul, I had a friend named Paul. His name was Tommy. Tommy. He had Lou Gehrig's disease, but his body just got worse and worse. Anyway, I brought him to the game as a treat. He was a baseball fan. And I'm sitting there with Tommy at the game. And you couldn't understand Tommy at this point. But anyway, Tom Hanks sat down with him, and I'll never forget the sight of it. I'm looking down there, and Tom is like talking to my friend Tommy. And I noticed Tommy was very earnestly listening, and Tom would nod his head and listen carefully to what he was saying. And I remember Tom signed a baseball for him. It was one of the happiest days of Tommy's life because of Tom Hanks.
And he didn't have to do that.
No, he didn't have to do that. He was just a very kind man.
Personally, I think of Tom Hanks as the last quote-unquote classic actor.
Maybe you're right. Yeah, the last movie star like that, right? Yeah. That's in that kind of an image, yeah.
Exactly.
He had this, innate goodness, this innate decency about him, like Jimmy Stewart had. I think he's a very religious guy. It's interesting, how does a person get that way? He's Greek Orthodox, I think, and he's very religious, but whatever it is, he's a very profoundly decent man.
Now, working on Polar Express,
yes.
Did you do motion capture acting?
Yeah, we did, Paul, every day. This is how it was. I don't know if it's like this now, but this was the technology. We did it in 2003. We go into the set every day, okay? You sit in makeup. They take a magic marker. They mark 152 dots on your face. Then they would take these little beads. They were electronic things or something. They glue a bead to each one. Now, on the set, literally, this is how high tech it was. If you lost one, they go, Eddie lost dot number 136. They go, Eddie needs a new 136. Literally, they had a person doing that. Somebody would come and put a new dot on my face, where the 136 dot would be, and they put them on my face. We would film a scene, Paul, in Polar Express. We'd act out the scene, da-da-da-da. Oh, look at the presents. I want to get all those presents. You behave yourself. We do the scene. Then they cut. Then they had little kids do the same scene. The kids would act out the same scenes. Little kids with our bodies. They had a little kid, Tom, me, Peter, and Nona.
So now you said you were originally going to be cast in Meatballs.
Right.
And there was I'm sure you know where I'm going to go with this. There was another quintessential 80s nerd movie that came out.
Yes.
Revenge of the Nerds.
Remember, there's 6,127 students at Adams, 58% of which are girls. So that's 7,107.32 boobs.
Yes, and I've been mistaken for that guy hundreds of times over the years. You're the guy in Revenge of the Nerds. Not so much now, but in my younger days, and the other one was Pee Wee Herman. I get mistaken for Pee Wee all the time.
Did you at all audition for it?
For Revenge of the No, I did a film which tanked. It was called The Whoopie Boys. This is with Paul Rodriguez and Michael O'Keefe, called The Whoopie Boys, with the producers who produced Revenge of the Nerds. But I went up to Adam Field, the producer, and I said, why did you not put me in Revenge of the Nerds? Are you crazy? Why didn't you put me, at least audition me for that film? This is what he told me. He said the joke of the film was they wanted to get more regular guys and dress them up as nerds. They wanted to make them into looking like. He goes, you're already a nerd. He goes, you look that way. There's nothing to do with you. He goes, we wanted to put glasses on these guys and turn them into nerdy characters. He goes, that was a joke. That's why we didn't have you. That's what he told me.
And that's because you're too good for them.
Yeah.
So, but you were in War Games.
Yes. Mr. Potato Head, yes.
And that is another movie from the 80s.
Hey, what's that?
I wanted Jim to see that.
Wow, where'd you get this?
I was trying to break into Protovision.
Hey, wait, Jim, I'm not through yet.
Remember you told me to tell.
It has really, over time, grown more and more and more in popularity. Believe it or not, I talk to people that Grease and War Games are the two movies that they really remember you from.
That's interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we're filming War Games, and I kept getting onto that line about data encryption algorithm. I can say it now.
That system probably contains the new data encryption algorithm. You'll never get in there.
But I kept screwing up that line. I go, it's the new data endocrine algorithm. Cut. It's the new data endocrine algorithm. Cut. Finally, the director. Now my director, by the way, was not John Badham. I worked for a guy called Marty Brest, who later directed Beverly Hills Cop. But he directed me. He was fired after 12 days. They didn't like his dailies, but luckily they left my scene in. But he directed me. Anyway, Marty called me over. He crooks his finger and called, Eddie, come here. He goes, let's take a walk. Okay. He goes, he puts his hand on my shoulder. He goes, you're costing the studio a lot of money. He goes, you keep screwing up these lines. You're costing us a lot of money. I felt terrible. I wasn't doing it on purpose, Mm-hmm. He goes, we're going to get you these things called idiot cards. They write your words down on idiot cards, and you're going to read them off. That's how you're going to do your scene. Okay. Anyway, Marty wrote down, I did it so easy. Paul, it was like second nature. I could just read the lines. If you look at War Games real careful, you can look real careful. I'm reading all those lines. It's a new data encryption algorithm. And I read it all off there. And I read my line. We got it done and nailed. And that was it. And then I started using cue cards. Now, when I did Polar Express and later films, I did Polar Express all with cue cards.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, did you at all spend time, hang out with Matthew Broderick or anything?
Yeah, I was driven to the set with Matthew Broderick. It was like the first day of shooting or something, but I went in with Matthew. His father had just died, James Broderick, the actor. I don't know if you remember him, but he was on a show called Family. He was a good actor. And I remember him talking about his father. And I looked back, and it was very endearing. He had tears in his eyes. I could see he was telling me stories about his father, and he had tears in his eyes. He obviously loved his dad a lot. We went to the set. He was a great guy. Matthew was a wonderful guy, a pleasure to work with. Ali Sheedy I knew, because I did a Turkey film called Surf 2. I don't know if you know that one. It was a real bad one with a guy called Eric Stoltz, who dated Ali Sheedy. And we'd play poker together, Eric and I, and Ali would come into the apartment with groceries or whatever. So I already knew her, but those were the ones there when I did my scene. And then my partner was Maury Chaykin, who was great. He made up the Mr. Potato Head line. We went in to rehearse that day. We're in the dressing room, and he goes, I'm going to call you Mr. Potato Head. So I laughed. They go, that's great. That's hilarious. He goes, yes, that wasn't in the script. But Maury invented that Mr. Potato Head line. That was his bit. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So now you did a little film, Midnight Madness.
Yeah, they make a smaller moped, but there's nothing like having one of these mean machines between your legs.
Yes, that was where I met Pee-wee. He wasn't Pee-wee Herman. He was Paul Rubens at the time. He's in the last part the last part of the film, maybe the last 20 minutes, whatever. We're all in an arcade, and there's like a cowboy. He has a very brief role, but he comes out as a cowboy. He goes, all right, and he draws guns out. He's not Pee-wee, but he's Paul Rubens as a cowboy.
Let's all sit down and discuss this calmly, rationally, and intelligently. Okay?
It was a very brief bit, but he was a great guy. I remember seeing him, Paul. I was at Canner's Deli in L.A., and I see Paul Rubens there. I go, what are you doing? Hey, Paul, you've been working today. He goes, I got this script, but nobody wants. He was pushing Pee-wee's Big Adventure. Because I have this script I'm taking around town, but nobody wants it, he said. And that was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. He was kind of downcast, at the time. And luckily he did get it financed, and he became a star.
Now, and what year was Midnight Madness?
79.
79.
It came out in 80, but we did it in 79, summer of 79.
War Games was in 83, correct?
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And this is the beginning of your career. I mean, I guess, how did you see yourself becoming more and more popular as a bigger star? Or...
I never really achieved stardom. That's my career. I'm always like a cult figure. I was always like, because I have a strong group of fans that like me, but I was never a star like Pee-wee. Pee Wee Herman's a star. I was never a household word. I'll meet people that go, I know you. Where do I know? I just did Chiller Theater. A couple months ago, I was signing at Chiller. Richard Dreyfuss is there. And Mr. Dreyfuss, I loved you in Jaws. You were great. He wags his finger at me. He goes, I know you. Where do I know you from? I go, I'm 1941. I was directed by Spielberg too. He goes, that's it. And I get that all the time.
Yeah.
People go, I know you. Don't I know you? Now, occasionally, they'll go, hi, Eddie, or they'll know me as Eddie. But usually it's, I know you. Don't I know you from somewhere? Are you in the movies, or who are, it's like that,
Yeah. You may not know your name, but they know your face and your movies.
Right.
So now I know you've done a lot of movies in between Midnight Madness and during that time.
Right.
But
I got into a lot of B movies then in that era. The era up until Polar Express, I did tons of B movies.
Yeah, and there was one, I don't consider it a B movie, but there was one that was my favorite when I was a kid. Critters 2.
Look at the mess you guys made.
Oh yeah, I turned into a woman. Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but were you actually in the bounty hunter costume?
I was in the costume, and then I was also made up in the woman's costume. Yeah, I was in both costumes. Yeah, and I did the change. Yeah.
So what was that like?
It was fun. Doing drag is fun. Doing the drag scene is fun. It's not, it's naturally funny. When a man dresses a woman, for some reason, it's always funny. So it was funny. The cast, I wasn't close to the cast necessarily on that film, but they were, everybody was nice. They were all right. And, it was just a film I did. I worked for maybe like 2 days on it. I didn't work a long time on it. I just had that little bit, Yeah.
How long were you in that film? Did you see when they did the Critters where they turned out a huge ball?
No, I honestly didn't. I remember seeing the ball. I saw the ball on the set, but not rolling it. But I saw the prop, that big ball of critters, that mixed into the ball. I did see that, and I was only on the film for a very short time. I was on it for, it's like War Games. It was just a brief bit, and I was there for a day or two,
So now we're going to transition into some of your TV work.
Sure.
Because I know besides film, you've also done a lot of TV, guest spots.
Right.
Were you on Magnum P.I.?
Magnum P.I., he was the greatest guy in the world. Tom Selleck was the nicest guy ever. We filmed, okay? And then he invited me up to his room, a bunch of us guys up in his room. We watched the ball game together. He catered a spaghetti dinner. He personally made the salad. I remember seeing Tom Selleck in the kitchen. He was mixing a salad, and he made a salad for us, and we all sat there and talked. He's giving me advice on women. I remember on the set, I hate black licorice. I loathe black licorice, just as food that I can't stand. But while I was walking with Tom on the set, we were chatting, and he takes out this big string of black licorice. He goes, "Want some licorice?" So I took the black licorice, and I'm choking it down. I choked it down. But that's the only time I ever ate black licorice. But I did it because he was Tom Selleck. I'm sorry. Yeah. But he called me Lon Chaney. He said, "Eddie's the new Lon Chaney." He goes, "The man of 1,000 faces." I remember he goes, "Can we call Eddie Lon Chaney?" That's what he always called me.
I was going to say that hearing you talk about these directors and actors like Tom Hanks, Tom Selleck, it really shows that it brings more of an impression that these are not just actors. They're real people.
Yeah, absolutely. I have found, you see these movies where the big stars are prima donnas. You obviously, the woman is real haughty and she's a prima donna. She's a big star, Meryl Streep or whatever. And I have found, Paul, almost inevitably, with very few exceptions, there are exceptions, but the biggest stars are really the nicest people. I feel like they don't have anything to prove, they're already there and they're not insecure, so they've always been nice to me. I've had a few bad experiences, but not many.
And then I remember you on Punky Brewster.
Yes, right.
Do you remember how many episodes were you on?
I did 8. I did 8 episodes of that, yes.
So
First season,
yeah. So
yep.
Now, again, I was a kid when I saw this, so to me it was like one of the biggest shows. I don't really remember how big of a show it really was.
Not that, I don't think, but
What was it? Well, I guess what's it like transitioning to film to TV?
TV was hard for me again because of the remembering lines thing. And when you do a sitcom, they're constantly changing lines, let alone that it's hard for me to just get a script. Let's say you just get a movie script. It's hard for me to remember my lines. This is TV where they change the lines every day. You'll do a joke and you'll go, I walked down and saw a maple tree on Main Street or whatever, and they'll change. Then under your door, they'll slip a blue page. It'll go, now you say, I walked down and saw an oak tree on 12th Street or whatever. They on the road or whatever. I saw Mary. Then a paper will be slipped on your door. Your line has changed. Now it says, I saw Gertrude or whatever. So you're constantly changing. And it drove me crazy, so I didn't like doing it. But somehow I got through it.
And sometimes that happens right before you shoot.
Yeah, they do it right before you shoot. Yeah, you have to have a quick mind to do sitcoms.
So what was it like working on the set of Punky Brewster?
George Gaines was a great guy. I saw, it was 1984, Paul McCartney was on The Tonight Show, and George Gaines got me tickets. He knew I was a Beatles fan. He was such a nice man. Eddie, I've got this for you, Eddie. Even though that broad British accent, I'm not doing it right, but he goes, I have these for you, and he gives me Paul McCartney tickets to see Paul McCartney.
Wow.
So I saw Paul McCartney on the Johnny Carson Show because of George Gaines. He was that nice of a guy. He got me those tickets, and I saw Paul. And I touched Paul, by the way, and his car ran over my foot. I swear to God. He was there after the show. We saw Paul McCartney. Then we all ran out like a hard day's night, and Paul's driving out with Linda in the little sports car. So he rolls down the window so we can touch him. And I went there and I touched Paul's arm. And then I felt a weight crush my foot. It felt like an elephant stepped on my foot. It was the biggest weight ever. It didn't break my foot, but it just smashed it and squashed it. And I think his car drove over my foot. I think he sped off, and part of his tire drove over my foot.
And you'll never wash that foot again.
That's right. Exactly. Exactly.
That's real. So now, besides the acting, you've also done a lot of voice work.
Yes, voiceovers. I love doing voiceovers.
Yeah, so how did you transition from physical acting to voice acting?
Yeah, voice acting is a way lower gradient. It's kind of like saying you fought Muhammad Ali, and then you transitioned and you fought this, mediocre third-string welterweight. It's like it's way less. So doing the thing was hard. Doing a sitcom is the tough thing. And then voiceovers are a piece of cake for any actor. You go into a studio, you have your lines all written there. You read your lines, and even if you screw up a line, they just go cut, take two, and you read your line. That's all. So it's so easy. You don't even have to shave. You go in unshaven, unkempt. Nobody cares, and you do your voiceovers. So that was easy.
So are you there in the room with the other actors?
Both ways. It worked both. Polar Express, we were there with the actors. It was kind of a voiceover film, but every scene was acted out. A lot of people go, oh, you did the voice in Polar Express. No, we acted out all those scenes. That is our movements. We acted out every scene in it, and they were all there. But a lot of times, I did a show called Dexter's Lab. We were always there. They have you all there. But a lot of shows I did one called, what was this called? Kim Possible. I did a cartoon series called Kim Possible, and that they would have us alone. You go in and you just read alone, which I like both ways. It's fun if you work with nice actors, and it's fun, working with nice people. But it's easy working alone too, because they can just direct you and put their attention on you.
Exactly. And one of the cartoons that I fondly remember your voice from is Darkwing Duck.
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah, that was one of my all-time favorite shows.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
So who did you work with on Darkwing Duck?
I worked with Tim Curry, and he was the nicest guy. God bless him. I love him. And I remember I asked him for his autograph, and he was such a sweet guy. I go, you really want that? He was surprised I asked for his autograph. He's Tim Curry. But I asked for his autograph. He couldn't have been nicer. It was a pleasure to work with.
And then you talked about Kim Possible, Dexter's Laboratory, which...
Dexter's Lab I loved, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great show. And then...
thank you.
SpongeBob.
Yes, I've done SpongeBob. Tom Kenny is the greatest guy, nicest guy ever. That was my last voiceover I did when I left L.A. I left in 2015, which I want to get back. I'm trying to get back there by the end of the year. After I've done all these signing shows, I want to go back there and try to get started again if I can. But that was my last one. I did. Tim Conway and I are in the end credits of the last SpongeBob movie, whatever it's called. I forget. I play a seagull. I think we both play seagulls.
So now you did the show and the movies?
I did the show a couple times, or specials. I did one with LeBron James, I remember one episode, and I did one other episode. I did two SpongeBobs and one movie. So it might have been a TV movie. I might have done a TV movie, I think, with LeBron James.
So did you work with LeBron James?
No, I never had to. I love LeBron James. I'm a huge fan, but I never got to meet him. But he is in that episode.
Okay. I was looking up some information about you, and I also read that you're a writer. And
yeah, I love to write.
Now, did you write for some different magazines? Or
Yeah, I used to write for Mental Floss. I wrote for, which was fun. That was a couple of years ago. And I wrote for Neatorama for a long time. We just ended a couple of months ago, Neatorama. I write an article for them every week. You can Google my article, Eddie Deezen, Neatorama. You'll see I wrote hundreds of articles you'll read, all kinds of pop culture stuff you read. And I wrote for one called Today I Found Out. I wrote articles for them. Yeah.
Cool. So is that, how long ago was that?
That was, Neatorama was just up to a couple months ago. I think it was literally like May. They literally said, we can't afford to pay the writers anymore, so they let me go. But I wrote for them for 2011 to 2008, for 7 full years. Mental Floss I wrote maybe like 2011 to 2013, a couple years. And Today I Found Out I wrote in between there for a couple years. Yeah, but you can Google all my articles. You can find them all on the Internet.
You know, I was just thinking of this. A lot of people outside of Hollywood, outside of the filmmaking, you know, they think of actors always just doing acting work.
Mm-hmm.
And then you hear actors like yourself, you know, yeah, you do acting, but you also do other avenues of things that you love to do.
Right.
As an actor or an aspiring actor, you shouldn't just sit on the couch waiting for something to fall in your lap. You have to
exactly.
You have to be active.
Yeah, especially especially when you're aspiring, starting out. Yeah, it's very hard.
Yeah,
and you have to it's best if you try to pitch something. Yeah, exactly. But even that's hard. I mean, you know the business. It's a very, very, very tough business, and it seems to get tougher every year. More people get into it. You know, it's very hard. There's a lot of competition. But I also believe if you're very good, if you do have it, you're going to get that break. Somebody will spot it.
Yeah, and don't just think if you're an aspiring actor, don't just think you have to focus 100% on acting.
Right.
There's other avenues you can do besides just acting.
Totally agree. And don't let it be the be-all and end-all of your life. I meant just this year, and I went through this myself. I think all actors go through. You go, oh, my God, I got to get this. The more desperate you get, that desperateness will just kill you. You got to take it more as a lark. Try to enjoy the experience. I know it's hard. You're going to get all this rejection, but man, I've seen these desperate acts. I'll tell you a weird one, Paul. The most desperate woman I've ever met, literally, man or woman. She came from my hometown, Cumberland, Maryland. I was in L.A. This is maybe like 20 years ago. And we went out to lunch. She was, I have to make it. I've got to make it. She was this bound and determined. I'm going to make it. I tried to be like, don't take it so serious. Give it a shot. No, I'm going to make it, Eddie. I'm going to make it big. And she was real serious. And I never know what happened to this girl. And I'm telling you, this is what I've learned over the years, Paul. When you want something really bad and you go, I got to have this. I'm going to get this no matter what. The universe will go the exact opposite. Mm-hmm. If you do that, the universe is going to say, screw you. And it's going to pull the thing away from you. So give it a try, yes. Go for your dreams, yes. You go after it and try, but take it as fun. Take it as fun and say, I enjoyed that. Try to have fun. I had this audition. I didn't get it, but I'll get the next one. Take that attitude. It's much healthier. And the ones that really want it real bad, I just think they're in trouble. It makes for an unhappy life.
Oh, I totally agree. And it goes back to you can't do this, I'm going to get rich. You can't do it for money. It's got to be out of love. For the
exactly
art.
Right. Something you enjoy, that you enjoy the joy of it. Yeah.
Now going back to the beginning of this interview where we talked about Grease,
mm-hmm.
It's the 40th anniversary this year, and I know a lot of my viewers are going to want to know about Grease.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just talk a little bit about Grease.
Okay, John Travolta. Okay, every day. My first scene, is the first scene I walk down the stairs in Grease High, and the bullies, the T-Birds, mess up my hair and mess up my. Every take, we did maybe like 5 takes or whatever, John would come over. Are you okay, buddy? He made sure I was okay. He called me buddy. He always called me buddy all through the film. But we do the take. It's a movie. The T-Birds were very nice. It was Michael Tucci, Barry Pearl, Kelly Ward. They were very nice guys in my life. But in the scene, they're bullies. They mess me up. Every take, John would come over. Are you okay, buddy? Da-da-da. Cut. They go, I'm fine. Thank you, sir. Thanks, John. Da-da-da. Cut. They mess me up. Hey, it's Eugene. They mess me up. Cut. John. Are you okay? You okay, buddy? Are you all right? They're not too hard on you. And he makes sure I was okay. That's who he is. He was a very kind man. I have this weird picture in my mind, and this is a true story too, Paul, but it really happened. I walk on the set one day. I was this little goofy, geeky kid. Nobody knew who I was. I'm licking this chocolate ice cream cone. I walk on the set. Literally like 20 yards or 30 yards down, John Travolta is there. he has all these, I remember there were all these cheerleaders around him, all these people around him. He was like the biggest star in the world. He was surrounded by all these people. John Travolta saw me, and I'll never forget to say, he jogs over. I see him jogging over. He comes over. How are you, buddy? He comes over and shakes my hand. He left all this mob. He comes over to shake my hand. How are you, buddy? He shook my hand. Then I said, I'm fine, John, da-da-da, and he went back. But that's just the kind of guy he was. He was like Tom Hanks. They're very kind-hearted guys. They're just very nice guys. They're mensches. You know what a mensch is? They were just really mensches, and John was that way. Olivia, I only met her once, the whole shoot. We were out on the lot once, and we hijacked this car. It was a red convertible, and it was just a lark, and there was somebody's car. And we went around and we cruised around Paramount, whipping around in this convertible. Olivia was in the front seat, and I was in the back seat. And we're driving around, and then the car stops. And she turned around to me. She goes, "You're funny." She said, "That's all." And she just said that. That was the only time I talked to her during the shoot. Now, cut to 2014. We go to Las Vegas. We see Olivia's show. Olivia Newton-John's there. And Olivia comes out, she waves. One of my favorite people's here tonight. She's so sweet, you know. She remembered me, and she called me up on stage, and I got to hug her. I go, "You're just as beautiful as you were then," and she is. She's still beautiful. And she had us back in her dressing room. Me and my mom were there, and my manager. She took us back in her dressing room, and we all got to talk and catch up. But she was just so lovely and sweet. She's a totally nice person.
Let's hear a story that you haven't told a gazillion times at conventions.
Well, let's see. Jeff Conaway was mean. Jeff was scary. He was the only cast member that scared me. And then later on, Jeff and I got to be friends. We'd do signing shows together. And I got to know him. And he was a nice guy. We'd sit there, and it was just me and Jeffy. We'd sign. And all the girls would come up to Jeff, and they'd giggle. You know, they loved Jeffy. And at the end, Jeff had 9 back operations. You know, he was gnarled over. He was literally like hunched over. And I did shows with him in those days. And the girls would come up, and they'd still giggle at him. They're still, you know, because the girls were seeing Kaniki. In Greece, he's like this Greek god, you know, Kaniki's this Greek god, and they still saw him there, and these girls gave. And Jeff was this gnarled guy. He had the body of like a 90-year-old man. He had 9 back operations. Jeff was very heavy into drugs, you know, and they'd see him there. And I remember being with Jeff, and the girls would giggle, and they wouldn't pay any attention to me, but they're seeing Kaniki, you know. Anyway, later on, Barry Pearl, one of the T-Birds, he arranged for us to all have lunch with Jeff at this home. Jeff was staying at this old folks' home at the time. This is like 2011. We go in. There's all these literally 96-year-old men and women, literally like your great-grandmother are there, and Jeff Conaway's staying there. We all ordered deli sandwiches, and we had sodas, and we all talked and reminisced about Greece. Jeff was in a wheelchair by this time, and I remember wheeling him around. You know, I almost cried, you know. This is my pal Jeff. He was Kaniki, and he's in a wheelchair, you know, and I remember him saying, "Eddie, did you get a soda okay? You need any help with the machine?" And I remember wheeling him around there, and that was the last time I saw Jeff, and then he died shortly after that.
And while you're wheeling him around and he's going through this, he's concerned about you if you got a drink.
He did. He was really worried that I got my soda. I remember that. He really cared. He was a good-hearted guy.
Wow, that really shows. Let's go ahead and switch a little bit to a little bit of fun. I know, like you've said, and I know you're a huge Beatles fan. You want to play a little game to test your knowledge?
Absolutely. I dare you. Go ahead.
Okay, just a few questions here.
Okay, sure.
So let's see here. Question. What was the Beatles' first American hit?
Would be I Want to Hold Your Hand.
That's right. And when did Ringo replace Pete Best?
August 19th, 1962.
And let's see here. 2 more questions.
Sure.
Which album did Penny Lane appear on, and what does Penny Lane? What's Penny Lane a reference to?
Well, Penny Lane is a place they used to be at. It was this little area in Liverpool that they'd wait. You know, you'd meet each other and all. And it was literally, you'd see places like this. John and Paul would meet, and they'd take a bus in Penny Lane and travel around. The album it's in, I think it's in Magical Mystery Tour. Is that right?
From what I looked at, it started off as just the B-side of Strawberry Fields Are Forever.
Exactly. It's the greatest record ever. It's double A side, right.
Yeah, and then later on it was put on Magical Mystery Tour.
Right, exactly. One of my favorite Beatles songs, by the way.
Which one, the Penny Lane?
Penny Lane. I love Penny Lane.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites too.
Yeah.
And now finally for the big question. Which Beatles album is better, the White Album or Sgt. Pepper?
Oh, that's that's subjective. That's subjective. I mean, so I'm going to go with I like the White Album better myself because you get twice as many Beatles songs.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and I totally agree with that. I'm a big Beatles fan myself, and that's the album I always seem to go to. is the White
There's
Album.
just twice as many to choose from. Now, there's some dogs on there. My least favorite Beatles song of all time is called Long, Long, Long by George Harrison. It's on that album, which is a turkey. There's some bad songs on there, but there's so many jewels. There's so many gems on there. And you figure you're getting 30 Beatles songs. I'd say 20 of them are just great songs. 10 are mediocre or bad.
Exactly.
I never like While My Guitar Gently Weeps. I never liked that. That's known as a classic by George. I never liked that one.
That's funny because neither have I.
It's
just one of those songs that just never really struck a chord with me. I don't know what.
Totally agree. Yeah. Do you like Long, Long, Long? I just hate that song.
It's in the middle. It's like sometimes I can listen to it, sometimes I
Right.
can't. I think it depends on the mood I'm in.
Right.
It's not a song that I hate, but it's not a song
Right.
that I would go out of my way to listen to as well.
Sure.
Okay, let's go on to some questions that I know. Actually, I have some questions here from a couple of our viewers.
Sure.
Rachel, the movie nerd from the UK, asks, how do you prepare for a role, either physical or voiceover?
What I used to do when I did movies, this was my own weird thing, just a custom. I'd always take a hot bath the night before. I'd always just lounge in the bathtub. I don't know why, because I'm a shower person. I never take baths. But when I would get a new movie, I'd always take a hot bath. It kind of relaxed me. You're always kind of nervous before starting a film. So I'd always take a hot bath that night before. That was when I did movies. Voiceovers, I just, nothing particular. I like to walk around. I'll walk the streets. I can't drive. So I would take the bus there, or I'd get a ride there, and I'd like to get there early. So I'll walk the streets. I kind of get the energy off, and I walk the streets up and down the blocks. Sometimes I get there an hour early, and I'll walk around the streets, or I'll walk in the supermarket, walk up and down the aisles, and that kind of gets the energy off. It helps me get my energy off.
That just helps you get in the character?
Well, just kind of get my energy. I'm very hyper, and that kind of walks my energy off a little bit.
Okay.
My character's always the same, so it's easy for me to assume this character. I always play Eddie Deezen. I play like myself, but a little exaggerated. I play always a geeky guy,
Yeah. Martha Cat from Canada, she says here that I heard about a short film in 2012 called I Love Eddie Deezen.
I love you, Eddie Deezen,
I love you, Eddie Deezen. So
right.
She wants to know, how were you approached with that film?
I have a friend called Sherry. Her name is Sherry Matson. She's a very talented girl. She wrote it. She produced it. She directed it. It's just a little short film. I actually just have a little bit in it. I just show up at the very end, and she finally meets me, and I say hi, and then there's a montage of us at the end. But it's her baby. It's like it was like a reel for her, for Sherry. And we had a party. We showed it. And Sherry's just very talented. It's pretty much her film. I think it might be on YouTube. I'm not even sure, but you can see that on the internet somewhere, I think. But it was just a fun little film. Sherry, I love her as a person. She's a Facebook friend, and I love her.
Now, now I haven't seen the film myself, but from what I gather, it's about her trying.
It's about her, yes. She goes to Hollywood to meet me. She has this job. She goes to Hollywood to meet me, and it shows all she goes through to meet me. So I'm just at the very end. I'm a very small part of it, even though I'm in the title. Mm-hmm. But it's Sherry. It's a Sherry Matson film.
Okay. So we're actually running a little out of time here. Do you have any tips for aspiring actors out there? Yes,
I get asked that all the time. Eddie, how do you get in the business, or what do you do in the business? This is what I always tell them, Paul, always. Give it the 5-year rule. There was an actor, do you know James Garner from the Rockford Files?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, okay, James Garner. When he started in the business, his father said, give it 5 years. I go, start out, you give it 5 years of your life. Now, if you don't make it in 5 years, if something doesn't happen in 5 years, you probably don't have it. If somebody doesn't see something in you in 5 years' time, you probably don't have it. 5 years is not that big a part of your life. If you look at a person's whole lifetime, 5 years is just a small bit of it. So you're still time to make a whole life for yourself. Now, in 5 years, maybe you'll get some kind of break. 5 years, give it everything you've got. Put your money into it. Throw all your energy into it. Really try hard and give it 5 years. And a lot of times it works. In 5 years, it happens to somebody, So I always say give it the 5 years rule. Another thing is try to make as many contacts as you can. Meet other actors. You have to get a good agent. So meet other actors. Maybe you can get an agent through them. But the hard part for young actors, you have to find a good agent. That's the necessary evil. So try to make as many friends as you can. Get yourself a good agent, and then it's up to you. They'll send you out. They'll put you out there. Then it comes down to your talent. And don't get discouraged. Remember, it's all subjective. You go in there, you could have Marlon Brando in there someday. And I'll tell you, any actor's gone through this, Paul. You go in there and I've gone in, I thought I was Bob Hope, Groucho Marx, Jerry Lewis. I thought, this is the funniest audition ever. You never hear from the guys. And then I've had other auditions. Literally, I go to my agents, I go, that was the worst audition I've ever had in my life. And they go, that's funny, they want you to report to the set on Monday. You got the job. So you don't know. It's subjective. You know how John Lennon thought Yoko Ono was the most beautiful woman in the world? That's subjective. That's what it is. It's all, whoever you're auditioning for, they see you in that way. So that's all it is. So maybe they'll reject. That's how that person saw you. That's all. You realize in life, every single person you meet sees you a different way. I see Paul. Now, you sound like a really nice, cool guy to me. Somebody else sees you this way. Some woman thinks you're hot. Some guy thinks you're a jerk. Some guy thinks you're a real nice guy. Everybody sees you in a different way. And that's the way it is when you're auditioning. Everybody sees you different. So don't get discouraged. Go in there, give it the best you had, and then just write it off. And then maybe they'll call you, maybe they won't.
Yeah, exactly. And that question was actually from Rebecca from Hawaii. I forgot to mention that.
Hi, Rebecca. Okay, sure.
The final question here from our viewers from Mike Vane from Australia.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking, how do you handle rejection?
Okay. It's kind of like what I said. And by the way, it still hurts no matter what. It's, when you get into the business, you think you're pretty hot, Let's face it, everybody in the business, every actor or actress, they can act humble, but you got to think you're pretty good to get in the business. You think you're something pretty special, You have your ego. I have my ego. We all have it. You just have to look at it that way. Try to be as analytical as you can, even though it still might hurt. You go, you ask a girl out and she says, get away from me, creep, It still hurts, but you just realize, maybe she had a bad day. Maybe it's her period, Maybe she's just a mean person. Maybe it's just subjective. You're not her type, whatever. You just have to try to look at it that way. And I know it can still hurt. There's something visceral there when somebody rejects you. It does hurt you. It hurts your feelings, But try to move on. Try to just do the audition, move on, and just forget it. I've had so many auditions over the years where I thought I had it in the bag. Man, this is in the bag. I'm going to start working, and you never hear from them. You wait for the phone to ring, and it never rings. So try to just do it and put it out of your mind and realize it is subjective. It's all subjective.
Yeah, I've talked to some casting directors in the past, and they have frankly said when they're casting a part, they have someone very, very specific in mind that fits that part.
Exactly.
And they're not going to stop you from auditioning. They're going to allow you to audition.
Right.
But if you end up not getting the part, it's not because of you. It's nothing personal. It's just you weren't right for the part.
Exactly. If you can imagine, have you ever, Paul, I'm sure you've had this, but I'll ask you both. Have you ever had a girl have a crush on you and you weren't attracted to her? Has that ever happened?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's how it is. That's exactly what it is. It's nothing bad she did. She's just not your type. You like whatever. Every guy likes a different kind of girl. Some guys like brunettes. Some guys like tall girls, big-chested girls, whatever. It's just that simple. It's not that you're a mean guy. It's not that you hate the girl. She's just not your type, So move on. Try to find a guy that likes you. That's all. And we've all been rejected by some. We've all been in unrequited love. You fall in love with this girl. Oh, my God, I love you. And she, no, get away from me. Hopefully they're nicer than that. But it's just that way. It's just you're not this girl's type, so move on.
Yeah.
You just, it's kind of like it's cruel and you just go, you got to face reality. Kind of like give yourself a slap in the face and say, move on, face reality.
Yeah, don't let that stop you from auditioning.
Yeah, don't let it stop you. As great as she is, and I promise you, as great as this girl was, there's going to come a time you're going to fall out of love with her, and you're going to move on, and you're going to fall in love with somebody else. It just is that way. And if you get rejected for that role, I promise you, there's going to be another one down the line.
And then sooner or later, you're going to find the one.
Now, the cruel thing about showbiz, I'm being totally honest with you, Paul, maybe there never will be that role. Because there's millions, literally millions of people that come to Hollywood and they never get in a movie and they never get a TV show and they never get anywhere. And that can happen. That's why I say again, give it the 5-year rule. Mm-hmm. Give it the 5 years. If you don't do anything in 5 years, please, it's like you lose in Vegas. I lost $100. Take your chips and go and cash in. Just go, I'm going to move on to something else in my life because you're just going to make yourself miserable. So you got to, find another job you like. Maybe, like you said, maybe write something. Try writing or something, Try getting into that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like my dad always told me, always have a backup plan.
Always have a backup plan, exactly, because it is the cruelest business in the world. You see Tom Hanks and John Travolta, you see Meryl Streep and Woody Allen go, this is cool, they become so, and you realize these people are a microcosm. They're like literally the one in a million. I'll tell you a quick story. We were at the Dodger game with Tom Hanks. And I go, Tom, do you ever feel like you won the lottery? I literally asked him, I said, you're Tom Hanks. And he nodded his head. He's bobbing his head up and down. I go, yeah. If you can imagine Tom Hanks bobbing his head up and down like a rabbit. He goes, yeah, I feel like I won that. And he's smart because there's so many barriers to you ever achieving that. You got to get the right role, and it's got to happen just that way. And you've got to be really talented, and somebody's got to spot that talent. And then the movie's got to be hit. Maybe you do great in a movie, and it just tanks, and nobody sees the movie. All different things can happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Well, I want to thank our viewers for their questions, and we are running out of time. But before we go, do you have any upcoming projects you can tell us about?
No, just simply signing shows. And honestly, I swear to God, my manager's going to send me where exactly the schedule is tomorrow. I don't even have it today.
Oh, wow.
But I have 3 signing shows in September, 1 in October, 1 in November. I think they're in Florida or in New Mexico or a couple, but I'm not sure. I love doing these shows. For me, they're a joy. Some can say, oh, Eddie's doing signing shows now. He used to be in movies. True, it's not as good as being in a movie, but I like it. I love meeting the people. I just meet the nicest people there, and I always have great stories. So they're fun for me. So that's basically all I have going right now.
So any final thoughts or wise words to our viewers out there?
Well, first of all, I want to say what a pleasure it was talking to you. You're one of the nicest interviewers I've ever had. You're a great guy, and I wish you continued success. Whatever dreams you have, Paul, I don't know you, but I hope you achieve all your dreams because you're a great guy. And thank you for having me as a guest. And I want to tell everybody, I hope you have a great summer. I hope you have a happy summer. I hope you're having a happy summer. And there's a lot of this stuff going around, with depression, and we see these guys knocking themselves off and all. Let me tell you this. I've had 2 really bad breakdowns in my life, 2001, 2015. Really bad depression and breakdowns. Don't let it beat you. Hang in there, okay? No matter how bad it gets, I promise you, it can look bright again tomorrow or the next day or the next week. So always hang in there. Don't ever give up on life. It's a precious thing, and there's a lot of joy to be had out there.
Exactly. I mean, I have a brother who's been through some stuff too, and with chronic depression and so forth.
Yeah.
But he's still plugging along, and
good for him.
He's not letting that stop him from living life.
Absolutely. Good for him.
And it's
more power to him.
Yeah, well, it's been a pleasure talking to you. You're a real cool guy, real easy to talk with.
Thank you, Paul.
It's just great hearing all these different stories you have, and I wish we could, I could probably spend 4 hours talking to you, but we always have a limited time. All right, guys, so that's the end of this interview. This has been Eddie Deezen, actor, voice actor, and if you are... Is there a website they can go to see where...
Yeah, I'm on eddiedeezen.com, and I'm on Facebook every day. Facebook, you can always see my stuff there.
Okay, yeah, so guys, I'm going to leave the link in the description below of his website. Do you have dates for shows on there? Probably.
Yeah, always go to my Facebook page. I keep people updated there.
Yeah, I was just going to say, check out his Facebook page. I'll put a link to your Facebook page so people can check it out.
Thank you.
All right, so it's been a pleasure talking to you, and we do have to go. But yeah, we'll definitely do this again.
Okay, have a great summer, Paul.
You too. Thank you.
Okay, bye.